Oh,
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
got a consent to it. It says sorry.
Do you consent?
I've done it. I've consented.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 67 of Get Out of Rap. Now that he's given his consent, he's back for number 4. It is future president of Nicaragua, business owner, LinkedIn legend, national treasure status pending. Charity expedition leader, all-round good guy, my mate, Nik McEwan. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. That was a really good intro. I like that one.
Do you like that?
Yeah. Can I just say I'm gutted that I didn't make number 69 of Get Out of Rap. It's gonna be 67.
Well, come back.
Yeah. We'll find a segment to talk about for number 69. We can do a best bits.
Yeah,
A
definitely.
highlight reel show of my previous 3 appearances on this one.
Well, there needs to be. There is Get Out of Rap merchandise now. Not just plugging that, but there needs to be like a football, because you remember Soccer AM? They used to give out the ball. You would have had one, and then we need to do something now for number 4. But it's been we've kind of mapped out our friendship via these podcasts, haven't we?
Yeah, can I just say before we get into that I have actually purchased a Get Out of Rap t-shirt.
I know, thank you very much. I saw that.
I'll be modelling that in the upcoming. Keep your eye on my Instagram stories for my 7 followers out there.
You've got more than that. You're being modest.
Probably being grey or black and white, moody lighting.
A bit moody.
Yeah, from my good side.
So, how the devil are you? What's been going on in your world?
Do you know what? I feel like I say the same thing all the time, and I always just say I'm busy when people ask, but I'm constructively busy at the moment.
And what does that mean?
Well, just in terms of the business, it's been non-stop. I made a hire over the weekend. I brought in a business support part-time. I've got an advert out at the moment for a bid coordinator to come in and help me just manage some of the workload, to be honest, mate, because I mean I think it's 33 clients we're up to now, and I mean,
wow.
I think it's 23 of those now are repeat, so it's just been it's I'm probably a year ahead of where I thought would be, 6 months to a year ahead of where I thought I'd be at this point. So I didn't really have the structure in place for it. So I've been doing a bit of work with sort of businesses outside of mine. So like for the customer experience, what I didn't want to lose, one of the big selling points that people always say when they come to me is that they feel like they're dealing with me, and like I talk to them as I would talk to a human. Not so we're not using excess corporate language. It's not 57,000 emails back and forth. It's them talking to me and then me getting an understanding of what they require. So I've been doing a bit of work with Think Wow at the moment. It's Daniel and Rebecca Brown on LinkedIn. There's the customer experience side of things, so that I'm maintaining that. So I don't at the same token that we have to scale it and grow, I still want to keep the reason I think people came to me in the first place was that they wanted to interact with me, and that they found that was the way to success for them. So it's a balancing act, but I mean, I've enjoyed working with Daniel and Rebecca so far, and that's one aspect of it. I say bringing new people in. I've had a lot of advice from some of my friends who are in recruitment, and just trying to I always feel, I'll be honest and say it, I always feel in terms of the business, like I know what my talents are in bid writing, but in terms of the business side of it, I've always felt like I was winging it. Like my pipeline was an Excel spreadsheet, you know, and that's changing slowly but surely. I'm becoming more professional, and the business is scaling at a rate that I didn't expect. So it's just, for me, mate, it's just a case of trying to keep the things that made the business work in the first place going, at the same token as allowing it to grow at the same time.
Mate, I think it's just been great to see see your success. And there's a couple of things there that I think just kind of talk to who you are, and actually, personal preference, how I think businesses should be anyway. It's the success is down to your hard work, who you are as a person. And I think it's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of that, I love that, your honesty around winging it, because I think we all feel that so often. But you've gone out there, you've done it, you get in the success that your hard work and your knowledge deserves, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't ever mean you're something you're not. And that kind of who I'm dealing with as a company, I think is so important that it's often overlooked. I think people think you have to suddenly change how you talk, change how you communicate, not be able to talk normally and use language that's normal. Everything has to suddenly but I think some of that, it comes from people trying to sell to you as a business owner, that wrapped up in their vocabulary is their expertise, when in fact, you know what you're doing. People buy you. I think it's great to see. What kind of boss are you going to be? Are you?
Have you seen, like, The Office with Ricky Gervais, David Brent?
David Brent, the Brentmeister General.
Yeah, like that kind.
He's got the same entertainer.
He's got he's got the same accent as you, hasn't he? But I don't know. I'd always like to think I'd be fair. Like, as long as you're fair and consistent, and if you're consistent in how you are, and like I could be annoying to work for, I'd imagine, because I have a way of doing things, and like anybody that comes on board would have to understand the way that I am, and the hunger I have, and the way that I'm pushing this thing forward, the energy that I bring to it. But that, on the same token, mate, it's one of those things, you always see those cheesy Richard Branson quotes. Well, I'm not one for them, but in reality, I want to hire people that are better than me at doing certain things, because that's how this business grows. And I don't want to bring people in and mold them into robots and change and say this is the way we do things. But on the same token, in this company, we are different. Look, we are different in terms of other. I mean, what I'm trying to do is bring an understanding that bid writing doesn't have to be a horrible, exhaustive process, and try and make it a bit sexy, like try and make it a bit fun, and try and get companies talking in their own voice. Excuse me, and still winning the work, and that's the difference. And every single company that I work with, that I've spoken to, has said the same thing. Like, bid writing is horrible. We hate doing it. It's time. It takes up time we don't have. Can't afford to hire a specialist bid team in, and that's the market. That's where we want to be. And everything that I'm doing is gearing towards that. It's all aimed at that market. But it doesn't have to be like, obviously the procurement team is, does anybody know who's on the procurement team in their company? Probably not, because it's a place that people avoid. Whereas I'm trying to show that it doesn't have to be like that. You can have human to human conversations around buying and procurement and tendering. It's not this horrible, boring monster. Like, it's definitely not as boring as accounts.
That's the worst.
It is the worst. It's definitely not as boring as accounts or HR. Let's put it that way.
I always found so in a previous employer, we were doing loads of different things where it needed new products, new services, and the stage that went to procurement was everyone dreaded in the project, because it just meant some of that, I think, actually was because you then had to justify, because you knew something, just because you knew something might be a good idea for the company. Oh, we'll change the product, or we'll do this type of new service in this new geographical location. Makes perfect sense. When someone scrutinizes it and says, how is it different to this? Or how do you justify this? And where's the ask you questions, and you're like, oh, just why do they make it so difficult? That frustration actually was because people were asking you questions. You kind of should have known the answers to in the first place anyway.
Yeah.
If anyone can make this whole thing sexy, then mate, that's got to be you.
Well, yeah, I haven't done. I do the photoshops normally, don't I? Photoshop my face onto some kind of bid-related article. I haven't done that for a while, so I'll probably bring that back for the fans.
So it's been how long has the company been up and running now? Where are you at?
6.5 months now.
Wow, and you're already way ahead of expectations.
Yeah, but so it's hard to quantify really, because I had, again, I'll be honest about it, I didn't know how well this was going to go. Like I've done things, I've given myself, like, I'm not silly, like I give myself a platform that gave me immediate eyes on what I was doing. So I decided that when it was time to launch whatever I was going to do, that I'd have a following, I'd have people that supported it. And like some people have said already, like someone said something about a bid writer, and I didn't know anyone apart from you that does bid writing. So if that's the case, then you're winning. You're winning already. It's half the battle's won. And so that's given me a massive head start. And it's always good to be honest and humble about that. It's not, I mean, I haven't advertised, I haven't spent money on advertising or gone to sort of marketers to help me with it. I've just relied purely on my network. And like I say, if 23 or 22, I think, repeat customers, then we're doing something right. So as long as that carries on and you improve on that, then you're not going to go too far wrong. But I didn't know where I'd be, mate. I mean, it could have, everyone could have turned around and said, well, he's that guy that takes the piss on LinkedIn, so there's no way we're using him. We need to win this £500,000 contract. I'm not having him write our bids, keep him miles away from it. But I mean, my skill set is my skill set, and regardless of the things I say or the opinions I hold on some things that people may or may not agree with, you can't knock the win rate and you can't knock what the business is doing. That's, I suppose, when we all look back, when we're sat on a porch on a rocking chair, that's what professionally you'd be remembered for. And as long as it speaks for itself, then you'd be happy. But I don't know why I went off on a tangent, but just to say, yeah, mate, I didn't really know where it would be, but I think ahead of conservative guests, we're probably 9 months to a year ahead of where we thought we'd be at this stage.
I like the fact that if you're thinking about being in a rocking chair, right, it's about looking back at key points in your working career, and knowing that you've stayed true to who you are and what you value and what you hold important. So the being around your LinkedIn posts and things like that, they haven't really changed. No. So they haven't changed at all from what I've seen.
Less swearing, maybe.
Are they really?
Maybe a little bit less swearing, but I do. To be honest, I do think about things in terms of like what I'm saying. Not to the point where I change it, but just to the point, like somebody said to me the other day, a woman wrote on one of my posts the other day, because I was mocking the anti-vaxxers in London again, as I like to do, and the woman was like, "This is not professional. I wouldn't work with you." And her job title was like lab assistant at some chemist in Texas. And you think, well, what scope do you have to make that decision anyway?
Why don't people just scroll on? You mentioned Ricky Gervais. I love the way he's talked about it in the past, which is social media like LinkedIn, Twitter. These are the modern day equivalents, right, of notice boards sat in the middle of a town.
Yeah.
And your post is pinned on the board, and it says what it says. I think he said it's like someone offering guitar lessons, and you get annoyed about that. Why couldn't you just walk past? Just read what you want to read and walk past. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, he also said, didn't he, that what gives you the right to be so arrogant that you feel that you have the right to be offended by something that I say.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, mate. Like it's always the same thing. Like I've always found, and I think it speaks maybe for social media in general, that I've always found, especially on LinkedIn, the people that criticize, the people the people that say things like this is not for LinkedIn. Well, number one, they're always awful at LinkedIn. Like so anybody who writes this shouldn't be on LinkedIn. If you all you got to do is click. What I used to do, if they'd write that, is click on their profile page and just screenshot their posts, and it's always the same story. There's no engagement, there's no following, and the stuff that they have liked previously or interacted with is either them just saying over and over again, this is not for LinkedIn, or it's interacting with things that they're criticizing on your post. I think a lot of it is people just venting one way or another. Whether they've had a bad day or they're not happy with their life or whatever it is, they're just venting. Now, there's things that you see. I mean, I don't know about you, but there's things that I see and I think, like, I've got to say something about that. And I think that, like, some things, that there was one the other day, and it was homophobic. Like, so there was a guy and he posted a picture of him and his husband on their wedding day. It was only last week, this. And there was a lot of comments from America and Africa saying, like, there's no woman in this photo, where's your wife, and all that sort of shit that, like, you'd want to see left behind 100 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I just thought, there's one boat that did it, and I said, look, mate, I said, that's a disgrace, what you've just said there. And I said, I'm embarrassed for you. And then he was kind of like, well, that's your opinion, and you can't argue with that. Do you know what I mean? If that's his opinion and he's not going to change his mind, you can't educate fucking idiots like that. Who's got the time? I haven't got time. Imagine, like, you've seen over the years, imagine all the negative comments I've had and all the people that argue and put their point across and just talk utter shite up there. Imagine if you tried to sit down or tried to sit down at your computer and reason with every one of those people. You're absolutely pissing the wind. There's not enough hours in the day.
No, there isn't. But I do think there's something about continuing to do what you're doing and calling it out, because I think over the last few years, it's starting to change. I think again for the better. But over the last few years, people have confused free speech as some sort of license that gives them carte blanche to be homophobic, to be racist, by saying it's free speech, it's my opinion. There are some things that are abhorrent, morally wrong, persecutory, and against the norms of society. And I think now we're starting to correct that, even though, like, yesterday, Gareth Southgate coming out saying what he said about sticking to taking the knee, even though England fans are booing. More power to him, because it's about keeping the debate. But I also think it's about letting people know that, because if you go back to the period between, I don't know, 92 and 2012, let's say, and I'm just sticking with, like, because remember the London Olympics, it was amazing. Since then, but certainly, let's say from 2016, Trump, that kind of thing, it was suddenly, it was okay to say racist things, and it's not okay. It's never been okay, because we are progressing as society. We don't burn witches anymore, because we've got better at understanding the world, who we are, brains. And fast forward again another 20, 30 years, I'd like to think all of this stuff will be left behind, this nonsense. We are all the same. Just let people live and have the same access to...
You are 100% right. And I think that, obviously, we know that 2016 to 2020, racism, hate crimes in general really rose across the Western world. What they were emboldened by, I'm not quite sure, but I don't think you could put it all on Donald Trump. But I know that some of the things that he said definitely played a part in that. But I think that the danger, as I see it, there's two dangers, mate, as that I think are really sort of at the forefront here. One is that it goes unchecked. So if Gareth Southgate said, right, actually the fans have booed, so we're not going to do that anymore, then that's cowering to racism, isn't it? That's cowering to bigotry and whatever, in whatever form it comes in. Whatever the reason people now, someone could be booing for a different reason. They wouldn't necessarily have to mean they're racist, but the connotations are the same. So if we're saying that we're kneeling for equality and we need it, to boo that, and for the England manager to say, well, actually, we are going to stop doing it because of that, then that's cowering to it, and that's a real danger. But then the other one, mate, that it's going to be a bit controversial probably, and I'll try and be as careful with my wording as I can. But so, like last week, when Sasha Johnson was shot in London, was it last weekend? Last Sunday?
Yeah, about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Well, the media and they were baying for it to be a white person, to make it a racial thing.
Yeah.
Now, my point has always been there's got to, and as soon as it came out that it wasn't a white person that did it, and it was, whether it was gang related, whatever the reason may be, but it was 4 black men that were arrested, the story completely disappeared from the media, from the whole media.
Because it doesn't suit their narrative. It doesn't suit their old way of. They're a template. They've got a template. They've got a way that they know that they're going to run it. So you're dead right.
And to me, that is, I mean, there's a fine line between working on and having conversations around eliminating inequality and hatred from our world, which I think you could say 98% of people, all normal people, you and I, and level-headed people, would want to see. Okay, there's no way that if someone said to me today, here's a magic button, you could end equality, you'd press the button. It's end inequality, should I say? You'd press the button. It's a no-brainer thing. But the line between that and driving home the differences between us is very fine. And I've always said since I've been speaking publicly about things for the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it would be, that if your sole focus is on the difference between us, and whether that be your sexuality or your religion or your color or a million different things, political leanings, whatever it could be, then that is where people's minds are going to sit. That's the reality they will then live in. Like, I mean, I'm not black, obviously, but I would have a problem, I think, if I was black, with someone's first description of me being, he's a black man.
Yeah.
You know, and I know I don't see that from coming from an experience point of view or anything like that, but it just seems to me that if that's your focus, then people talk about, well, you should be proud in history, and I get all that. But if all I am is eliminate everything about who I am and instantly drawn down to which color my skin is, then that, to me, that's dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Because you're taking the human element away, and what you're basically saying is you're a different version of this. And in reality, it's not true. We just look different. Like me and you have different color hair. Like, it doesn't matter. And I know this is a really simplistic argument, but that would be my point. If I was walking down the street and somebody said, look, there's a black man, rather than there's a man walking down the street.
Yeah.
But it just seems to me your whole life's work and everything that you do and who you are is eliminated by that narrative straight away. And I think that if that's always the focus, and then that's the message put forward, then if you're told by the media 27,000 times a day, this person was black, this person was white, then subconsciously that's the reality you're then in. So you're going to say, oh, he was a black person, not just, oh, he was a guy from London, or he was a guy from Scotland, or whatever it would be, you know, and he was an engineer, or he was a chemist. It just seems to me strange, this notion that a black man, a black woman, or an Asian woman, or what does that matter?
That's why language, you mentioned the media, language that they use, you can spot differences, and what they're trying to do is be a lot, blanket brush here, but for a lot of some of the tabloids or clickbait websites and things like that, they're trying to be incendiary. Yeah. And to do that, they use language. So your point's really valid. It's kind of, if someone says, "Oh, who's so and so?" and he says, "Oh, he's that black guy," that isn't a good description. That I need more to be able to identify someone than that.
Yeah.
So your point is really valid. I think it's interesting. You can't. You said earlier you can't spend your time educating people, and some people are absolutely lost causes. I do think, though, that public opinion, people being challenged in ways that still don't send them away into the shadows, that still treat them with respect, can change people. And there's no better change than experience, because even in the dark days of racism in this country, people would be horrible about people from different ethnic backgrounds, but always say, "Oh, but my mate who might be in that ethnic group, he's all right," And it then being able to take that and say, you do see that that's illogical, that there is, the reason you say he's all right is he is a human being like you. And you're right, it's our differences that we have far more in common than we do differences, but differences are the things that kind of lead to all of these troubles. But I think, like you, I have faith that the majority of our society see it for what it is, and don't react or just get tired of it. There's been too much division, whether it has been elections, Brexit, Trump, whatever. We've got through something like COVID because we've actually worked together. The majority of societies work together, which is why the anti-vaxxers that have been protesting, you're kind of like, guys, we're nearly done. You're protesting about nothing. We're cracking on with it. You guys just do what you need to do. But
they just move the goalpost, don't they? That's the thing with them. They move the goalpost, and it's always the same. It's always the same thing, mate. Like I'm stuck somewhere between the bit we said about free speech and no to hate speech. Yeah, probably. But how do we define that? And then the one thing that I can't stand to see that annoys me just as much as the initial thing. So I'll give you an example. So, for instance, somebody writes something on LinkedIn, or here's an example. So someone sends, excuse me, an inappropriate message to a woman on LinkedIn. Woman then screenshots that, or man, whichever way you want it to be, whichever way around, screenshots that, posts it on LinkedIn. 300 people slate this person into the ground. Like, to me, there's no difference between him doing, I mean, his act or her act was wrong in the first place. We get that. But does having 300 people insulting, abusing, like contacting their employers, all that sort, is that any better? Like, and at what point does it become that there's a standard, isn't there? Somewhere in the middle, there has to be a standard that we say, look, we can condemn this and we can say this is wrong and we can take appropriate action and whatever it would be. But this piling on culture, this get this person banned and removed culture, and all of these things that are flying around at the moment, to me, it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy. And that all that happens is, mate, you'll end up with a subsect of people, and one of their homophobia, they get cut off, or will then turn into racism, because all of these people will be sort of sent to the same place of just nowhere. They're not in the conversation. They're outside of the debate. Nobody's educating them. No one's talking to them. They're not condemned because nobody sees what they say. So their thoughts just manifest and grow, and they're all exiled together. So then your homophobia becomes racism as well, and your racism becomes, I don't know, discrimination against Jewish people or Muslims or whatever it may be. And that's what happened. That's the danger to me of cutting these people off, because if you did something wrong and I said, look, mate, I don't think you're right for that, and this is why I don't think you're right from that, then whether you learn something or not, the point is your attitude and your point of view on it has been questioned. But to just say, right, you should be removed, then you're just removed and you still have that point of view. You're just over there with that point of view. And you're not here.
That was kind of my point about you. We should. It's the extent to which people that are doing things like that are reasonable or open to a true debate and understanding about what they're doing is wrong. That's less likely, even if they were open. So there's let's say that person goes, well, okay, I'm willing to talk about it. They won't talk about it if they're mob chased out of whatever platform they're on. So I totally get that. And actually moving a lot of people with those views into other platforms has already been shown to be dangerous because they will fuel each other. It's a real. I find that one a real challenging one to try and get my head around as well, because if you take, like, let's take sexist behavior, misogynistic behavior, that kind of stuff, women should just be allowed, like men, to get on with their day. Like, the thought of me and you encountering any kind of sexual harassment today is a nonsense, isn't it? Even though you're bringing sexy
probably less so for you, yeah.
But it is a nonsense, isn't it? We, at no point today do I think either me or you will be made to feel uncomfortable because of something that's said or unwarranted comments. The women in our lives will have that challenge every day. And so when that happens, calling it out, and because equally, I've kind of gone both sides of this. I've sometimes wondered why the perpetrator, the person that said something horrible on a professional platform like LinkedIn, has had their anonymity protected. I've thought, oh, that's weird. But then equally, I've also seen, like you, when it isn't protected, that there's a pile on. But do they deserve it or not? What they've done is just weird and wrong. But I think if you think about the solution, if you think about what we all want, it isn't going to be achieved by either ignoring it or castigating people to the point where they never want to engage with anyone else. They're going to get worse, if anything.
Well, yeah, you're only going to harness their beliefs, aren't you? It's and then they've got, say if it was a racist post, or even unintentionally racist post these days, that gets absolutely piled onto, then that guy who probably wasn't a racist has just said the wrong word in, or has tried to communicate a point, or whatever it would be, or maybe even is slightly racist or is racist entirely. But then he's not going to go away and think, well, I've been driven out by, and he's going to think, isn't he, all of these foreign people and black people, whatever it may be. That's what he's going to believe. That's what he's going to take away from that. And sometimes, what I'm saying is, in an argument, in anger, nothing's ever solved.
No.
Like, nothing's ever, like, if you've ever argued with your missus or your husband, some listeners, or whatever it would be, when you're in the bit of the row, when you're both angry and you're both emotional about it, that's not when it gets solved.
No.
It gets solved afterwards, when everybody, like, so then when you start to expand on the points that you made and try and process them and understand them, there's that saying, isn't there? Was it probably Martin Luther King? And was it you don't drive darkness out with more darkness, which is
Correct.
in reality,
Yeah.
if you've got a dark room, you're not going to make it lighter by putting darkness in there, right? It's just,
Correct.
so
that's it's love and hate as well. You don't. It's love that does this, and that kind of point about talking about what we have in common.
Yeah.
And understanding, and that's why I think you take some of this learned behavior, but understanding that learned behavior can change.
Yeah.
That people can change. There will be a tiny minority, I think, that are beyond change, because it doesn't suit them. But I'd like to think that we're getting there. It feels a bit more positive again. Things do. I don't know whether that has been a weird side effect of coming together, working against COVID, and all having the same shared experience.
Yeah.
Regardless of anything, we've all had to go through lockdown. People are more open to talk about mental health or worried about COVID, and we're getting through it. We are getting through it, and I think that's great.
I think a lot of it, mate, is necessity, but on the wider picture, I think a lot of people have tuned out, and I think that's been a massively positive thing. Obviously, I talk to hundreds of people every week, and as part of LinkedIn and my job and stuff, and I think that a lot of people I spoke to have tuned out now. They're not watching BBC News. They're not listening to the constant negatives that are being pushed in their face, and people seem a bit happier, like happier in the communities and happier on an individual level, and that's what's important. I mean, the narrative changes all the time. It's like we've seen recently with Israel and Palestine. Now, if you're watching that with any sense of humanity and sensibility, then you would be like, there's a lot of people I know and I've spoken to before who would have been probably on Israel's side in this automatically because the other side happened to be Muslims. Now, there was, after 9/11 and London, there was quite a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment in the world, I thought. And I think it was prevalent in a lot of societies where I had never noticed it before. Like growing up and those sorts of things, I didn't know about people being anti-Muslim and all of these things. And there was a lot of that sentiment. But then that's it, the tide's starting to turn. And I find I'm not saying Israel, I mean, I'm not qualified to sort out the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but my point would be that the narrative around Muslims in that region seems to have changed. And it's changed twice in the time I've been alive. So I think that as the narrative changes, what you hope is that it moves more towards bringing the truth to light in whatever it would be. Like, you can't demonize black people, you can't demonize Muslims, you can't demonize as a whole, because it's not correct. And I think that people are learning that, and I think that things like sexism, racism, all of these things in the workplace, at homes, in the media coverage, on TV, is, I don't want to say it's nowhere near problem solved. We all know that. But as long as we're on the right path, there'll never be a quick solution. There'll never be a quick, all right, overnight, this is it. Everybody's equal. We're all friends. We all love each other. But it's not going to happen. But as long as we're working towards that, and it's the same as anything else in your life, mate, as long as it's better than it was yesterday, then that's the right thing. And I have noticed that lately. I've noticed in general, like the way people calling out things that they wouldn't have called out before, people standing up for things that they definitely wouldn't have stood up for before, friends of mine from the town and stuff who sometimes a bit small town thinking and kind of think, like, this is it round here and this is all, and you see their opinions changing and them trying to understand the things that go on in the wider world. And to me, that's such a brilliant thing. And that's a long laboured point, mate. That's the bonus that I see. That's the win that I see from everything that we've talked about in terms of hatred and bigotry and everything like that. This is the win. This is how you win it, by slowly, day to day, everybody getting more of an understanding, rather than concentrating on what divides us.
100%. I love that. I think I lived in Istanbul for 2.5 years with work and as a lone Englishman out there. And when some of the time when I've come back, people would say, "What are they like?" And I would say, Who are they?"
Yeah.
I said, like everyone you work with. And I said, they're exactly the same as me and you. They're parents, sisters, brothers, lovers. They have hopes, dreams. They're happy, they're sad. There is not this weird difference that you think, in the same way that someone might say, well, the UK is a Christian country, Turkey is a Muslim country. Guess what? Of the 300 people I worked with every single day, they were exactly the same as when I worked in the UK in terms of the extent to which they were religious, if you just wanted to concentrate on that one thing.
Yeah.
But they were human beings. I played five-a-side football out there every week, and we didn't initially, for the first year and a half. I couldn't speak any Turkish, and the footballers I was playing with could speak limited English. But we had a great time. It was brilliant because guess what? We all loved football, and it didn't matter when you're playing. You didn't think, I'm not going to pass to him, or he's different, or whatever. We were just playing football and loving playing football. Guess what? Because we're all the same. It was, and when people would say stuff like, it must have been a nightmare working there. Why was it? Yeah, it was a real challenge. But guess what? People treated me so lovely, and it was people were friendly, wanting to be friends, curious, and if you were the same way back, it's an amazing experience, one of the best of my life. But people try and go straight into a lot of what the media. It's easier for them to say suicide bombers. The call to prayer means that everyone stops, and this devout religiousness means that people don't think, and there's no science and art and stuff like that. It couldn't be further from the truth. But trying to get that across, that we are all the same, and that you're right. I'm always hopeful, and if today is slightly better than yesterday, eventually we will get there. Which is why, for example, I was saying we don't burn witches anymore. There's things that people go, it's our tradition. Well, guess what? Some traditions were mental, and we understand them to be mental now.
Yes.
We don't sleep with frogs under our bed because we think that's going to help us cure measles.
Yeah.
We are progressing as a society. That's one thing that is certain. But we've just got to try and make sure that as many people come along for the ride as possible.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Well, I have the same experience with Uganda, mate, as Turkey. People, when I came back, people questioned, oh God, did everyone live in mud huts? And yeah, some people did, to be fair, like some people did. But like the idea that we had nothing in common and that we were completely different things was just mental.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely crazy. And as soon as I got there, I realised that, I didn't know what it'd be like, to be honest, when I got there, but it's a beautiful place full of beautiful people, and they are different, but then in many ways they're the same. And excuse me, like I said before, that should be the focus of it, mate. That's how we move forward. Definitely.
Love it. Just before we wrap up, I want to give you the opportunity to share something great that you're doing, which is the Eat Like a Refugee. Can you just talk about that?
The stupidest idea I've ever had in my whole life. By far. So for a week, 13th of June for a week, I've been sent a ration pack from Concern Worldwide, which are Concern Worldwide UK in this case, and it's the rations that are given out in Syrian camps and places like that. So this is what people are to survive on a week, and it's just, honestly, it's utterly ridiculous. Like, it's utterly ridiculous how little there is. It highlights another inequality in the world, and that's poverty and food poverty. And for me, I mean, I mean, as much as I've seen and done around the world, and where I've been, and the charities and causes I've helped and stuff, like, this one was one that I hadn't put much thought to be honest, because I'd always, like, in the stuff that I've done around the world in Africa and places like that, I've always focused on education and medicine but in reality, you can have all the medicine in the world, but if you've got no food, you're not going to survive. And that was a real eye opener, like, sort of taking a dive into this and learning a bit more about it and how they solve it. And then you get, like, I posted about it the other day, and it got really good feedback. And then one random person was like, that's fine for a week, and it's like, well, you fucking eat it then. Do you know what I mean? Like, that, from now on, that's all you can eat every week if it's fine.
Marcus Rashford had the same response, didn't he, when he was helping out with the school meals? Again, some people went, yeah, this looks fine to me. Well, I can guarantee the people that were saying that were not eating the same.
No, of course. It was so-and-so it was John, who owns a construction firm from Oldham, probably saying these sort of things, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? And he's probably got a Range Rover and a 3-bedroom house or 4-bedroom house or whatever. But it's the same. It's the same. There's always someone that, some people naturally have more empathy than others. We know that, but there's no way, without an agenda, without any agenda based on somebody's race, where they come from, their migrant status, and you could look at that I put on there and say, that's enough food.
Yeah,
like,
if
you're saying that, then you've got an agenda. And I mean, I've been around the world to places where they have no food, and I do a lot of outdoor stuff, where, not so much this year, but with outdoor stuff where you are sort of getting by on what you can get by. And a lot of my training and that sort of stuff over the last few years was like that. And I know what's enough food and what isn't enough food. And for anybody who comments that sort of thing, is either A, just looking for an argument, or B, there's an agenda there. And oftentimes, one of the beautiful things about social media that's often overlooked is that these people out themselves without any help at all.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying it, mate. I'm not looking forward to it. I've got some recipes and stuff, and it's just going to be one of those things that you just get through. Like, it's not going to be fun at all. But a lot of people saying, well, I couldn't do that. It's the same, that you can do it if you wanted to. You could do it because you had to.
So how can we see what you're up to, and how can we support you?
Well, there's a link on my LinkedIn to the donations page, and I'm going to be posting about my meals and how depressed I am.
And everyone wants to see that.
Yeah, that's what people usually sign up for with me, so I'm just going to be posting those kind of updates. I'm going to be showing everyone as real as I can. Like, look, this is it's not pleasant, but this is what we're doing it for. And I always try in all these things, mate, to try and sort of give the real human side of it. This is where we're at. This is what we're doing, and it's a really good thing. I'm really happy to be doing it. I know it's only a week, but it feels like it's a big deal. It feels like it could be something good. It's had a good response. I mean, as a team, we've already beat our fundraising target. People are getting behind it. So, so any more raised to be brilliant. And I think that there's a sliding scale. So the more you raise, like, say if I raise, I don't know what it is, like another £100, I get a vegetable, I think, for the week or something like that. So, but by all means, have a look on the page, because the amount of food is utterly ridiculous for a human being.
I'll be doing it. I absolutely recommend everyone kind of gets behind you and supports you. Again, you do some great work, and this is another example of it. So more power to you, my friend.
Thanks, mate.
Nick, thank you very much for coming on. For people can follow Nick, follow his company, the great work that he's done, making bid writing and procurement sexy. and doing some great stuff for charities. Pleasure as always, my friend.
Yeah, it's been good to speak to you, mate, and catch up soon.
Okay, buddy.
Take it easy.
See you later.
See you, mate.